Greek mythology love stories have always had a sad and twisted fate at the end of their tales, or a sequence of tragic love. This is the common path that most Roman and Greek mythology writers choose. But one particular mythological story that, in my eyes, stands out and differs from the rest of the concept of Roman storytelling would be the story of Eros and Psyche, a story that captures the power of vain, beauty, jealousy, and trust in a love story with a not so tragic end. We begin our story with the grand introduction of our female lead, Psyche, which means soul in Latin. There are many versions of the same story out there, but all begin from the very start describing Psyche as the most beautiful girl alive in her time. She was of a well known family, with two sisters who, although were also fair and lovely, did not compare to Psyche's beauty. But this, of course, brought attraction to all around her, including the goddess of love, Venus. Now, here's where many versions have interpreted the true meaning of the story. To many, it is a tale of true love, how Psyche is willing to do anything, including the impossible harsh chores Venus assigns her later on. To some, it is a story of learning how to trust and love unconditionally the way Eros, also known as Cupid, instructs Psyche to not see him but to simply enjoy their love every night they encounter. But to me, the story goes far beyond the love story of a god and mortal. This is a story that can teach us how to trust as humans and learn to embrace our journey from life to death, but later on analyze the other side of the story we do not commonly hear about. We can analyze the representation of vain or vanity depicted from the very start of Psyche's journey. By beginning extremely beautiful, it was both a blessing and curse to begin with. Her beauty caused jealousy and envy from both Venus and her sisters, which would bring an uncanny fate to her very soon. Already here, beauty is depicted as something to show off, as if beauty meant wealth and a lot of value. To a certain extent, we can interpret beauty and wealth as the same thing. Due to the period the story was set, food and necessities to survive were more difficult to get by. At least so this is the way I have interpreted the meaning behind beauty and why it was so glorified by the Romans and gods and goddesses. We can say beauty was the symbol of the abundance of health, which meant you were superior to the common man. And so, our story of Eros and Psyche represents many of these hidden symbols and representations of the human journey within the love story. The reason why I also mentioned the meaning of Psyche's name in Latin is to prove that perhaps Psyche is more than just a girl in the story, but representing us as humans and how we can learn to trust and love truly. In the story, when Psyche asks why she cannot see him when they meet every night to make love, he insists and asks her if their love is not enough, and that in the dark they are equals. Eros was Cupid, the god of love, and could make anyone fall in love with him one shot of his arrows. So for him to convince himself that Psyche was truly in love with him, he would hide in the shadows of the sheets. That was the first test of trust for Psyche. The second one was one of her last tasks given by Venus to fetch the beauty of Persephone from the underworld, but was told and instructed not to open the box at any time. In both missions, she failed to trust both Eros and Persephone by believing the words of her two jealous sisters to see for her own eyes if she did marry a monster, as the prophecy had foretold. In both situations, Psyche went from being an innocent and faithful girl to a doubtful and faithless woman. The moment she listened to her envious sisters and lit the candle to see her husband, and when she did not believe the warnings of Persephone and opened the box that didn't contain the beauty but death, she ultimately had to pay the price of both her actions. And Eros, her husband, left her, according to the original story. She was pregnant with his child, but left even so, since Eros felt betrayed. And in the other, lost her life since she was mortal. Nevertheless, she was forgiven and brought back to life as an immortal goddess by the mercy of Zeus at the end of her journey. But we can understand that in love, without trust, we can only bring ourselves more problems. Even though I say this, I have the same concept of the story of the power of beauty, vain, and trust in love in the story of Eros and Psyche, but the other side of the story we do not read or hear much about. Although I admit the love story of Eros and Psyche is far the healthiest relationship compared to Hera and Zeus, or the ancestral and risky form Hades and Persephone to how they found love. First off, the time frame of the mythological stories is already an era of abundance, love, and passion. The Romans were very good storytellers and indeed fascinated with the tragic endings or drama in their poems and stories. But each mythological story always ends up with a very dark twist. But when you read the story of Eros' love for Psyche, you will find a tale of a handsome young god that fell for a beautiful mortal that dealt with normal trust issues to grow their love and face journeys to test their love. But even so, I beg to differ on the issue that most romance and love stories tend to glorify and portray. The story of Eros and Psyche indeed teaches the audience how to admire and understand to love, but perhaps there is more to this meaning that could be underrated and biased to some extent. But this is my analysis after reading again and again the depth of the story of Eros and Psyche. Psyche truly did love Eros to go and risk her life to win back the love of her husband. But while Venus assigned her to take on the most impossible four tasks, she was not alone in doing so. From the very beginning of the story, we hear how the mortal world and immortal world were all in aura and charmed due to her magnificent beauty. In the end, her beauty indeed had a price to pay, but for the most part, it almost feels as if the story is showing children in the audience that those who were blessed with such beauty and admiration will always find a way to succeed and be loved by all of those around them, including the gods, who, as I mentioned, helped her in some of the tasks Venus assigned her. Yes, this is a non-fiction story to entertain and portray to love. But even so, many of our present stories, love stories, we kindly remember, such as Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella, are most definitely and in some forms inspired by this love story. And so, my challenge on the love and journey of Psyche is perhaps, as readers in present time, we should read this tale as simply that the story of a god who fell for a mortal and nothing more. Because when the story is told again, we will be telling our younger audience and new to love and hungry for a lesson learned that due to her extravagant beauty and naiveness, she was blessed and lucky to have been helped and pitied. Would we not exclude the rest of those who would not relate to Psyche? Will children grow to believe that unless they are beautiful, luck and help will not be so easy to find? In our modern world, if an author and story mention this in our easy language, this will be considered pretty privileged. Eros and Psyche do hold a beautiful ending to their love that stands out from the others, which is why I chose to analyze deeply on their story. But in stories about love and fantasy, we tend to forget the impact a story can make on any passionate reader, including the younger audience. For which the challenge is to remember that this is simply a love story of one mythical god and mortal, and not shine so much on her beauty. Psyche was indeed a brave and hard-working girl at the end of her journey, but she was not alone in facing the troubles. I would like to remind the reader to challenge the story to read the story as its ending, but not to glorify as to why she was blessed and lucky. For if you do read the story as it without digging deeper, it is indeed a lovely tale of true love, but not applicable nor realistic to how love truly is in our times. The last take in this story we can analyze is Psyche's representation of a young woman's purity. Psyche is a young woman who at the beginning is lost and confused as to why she was cursed after being single to marry a monster and die, and is very humble in accepting each of her unkind encounters. But when Eros falls in love with her, he is very strict about trust and does not allow her to know many things. He keeps her away from her family for quite a while and insists that she remains happy and faithful without needing to reveal himself and is gone for most of the day to avoid exposing his beauty and identity. Perhaps another take is shown that Psyche is the womanhood that was once expected of, to remain as pure and naive as possible, because this was more pleasant and appealing to their society and men. And each time Psyche disobeyed and learned new information, she became or portrayed as dirty, less appealing, and unwanted more desired. As stated again, Psyche managed to face her adversaries and grow from them, and challenge herself more, but one can't help but see Eros and a comparison to how women were seen in the eyes of men. Nevertheless, Psyche demonstrated her true love, Venus and Zeus, to be forgiven and restore the love of Eros once again and forever, which is a refreshing end that most mythological stories rarely gave. In the end, no matter how the story is read and interpreted, there is always room to learn from mistakes and success. The story and love of Christ Psyche and Eros presents even to our time